Hi, welcome back. My name is Brittany, and today's video is the mid-year book Freakout. This is a set of questions that has circulated on BookTube for years and years. Honestly, the original creator is lost on me. I just copied my questions from last year, but this is just basically a set of questions looking at the books you've read at the midway check-in point, and just asking some fun questions about it and doing a little bit of a goal check-in at the same time. I have only read 22 books so far this year. This is my slowest reading year yet. So I don't have a ton of options to pick through, but I think we can still have some fun going through these questions. So with all that being said, let's jump right into question number one. So question number one is, what is your favorite book so far this year? And I have a couple that come to mind. The first one that sticks out is Afterworld by Debbie Urbinsky. Got it right here. This is a sci-fi novel, and what I liked so much about this one is how unique it was in its writing structure and storytelling style, and just the overall plot and concept was pretty wild as well. But we have asked AI to help us save the Earth, and they decide to do so by releasing a virus that kills everybody. So their grand plan is that once all the humans are dead, we can either stay dead or upload our consciousness to Afterworld. That way we're all off the Earth, we can't harm it anymore, and Earth can replenish and regrow and save itself. So we are following this story and this concept through one of the AIs who is responsible for cataloging all human experiences and like helping upload to Afterworld. So we meet our human character, but only through an AI. And it's so interesting because they're getting the human's life through surveillance footage, journal entries, any document they can find, and then they're using their own research and like cross-referencing things. Like, it just was so interesting and funny at times, but also like probably one of the darker and best descriptions I've read of like the end of days, the end of the world. I read Station 11, which is kind of lauded as being one of the best like end of the world books to an extent, that takes place after a pandemic. And I honestly didn't like it. I thought this was way better and way darker and explored a lot of those themes of loneliness and isolation and like kind of being the last person on Earth. So I really liked this. This is not going to be for everybody, but if you are up for a challenge, this one definitely stuck out. The other book that comes to mind is Mayfly by CJ Lead. And this is a horror, almost like borderline splatterpunk novel, and I just thought it was fun. It was gross. It was weird. I'd never read anything like that before. I just really enjoyed it. In Mayfly, we are following our main character, who is in her late 20s, if not early 30s, and she works at basically like a sister park to Disney as Elsa and Anna, but they can't like say they're from Frozen in the book, I think because of copyright. Or like trademarks or something. But you like get the gist that she is a frozen ice princess. And she has very dark tendencies. One of her hobbies is like catfishing other people online to expose their dark secrets and watch their life crumble. She's very obsessed with the macabre, and you learn about her relationship with her grandma and her coworker. And then her coworker's brother comes to town, and she is like equal parts like attracted to him but also like annoyed by him, and they have a weird relationship that develops. And then she also gets like really paranoid. There's this creepy doll that starts appearing like kind of in her area in California. She's one of those people who's like, I know this city like the back of my hand, I know every nook and cranny. And so when this doll appears, she's like, who is doing this? And like she feels like they know that she knows the doll is there. So you just watch her spiral, and it becomes really gross, really fucking weird. It's quite explicit in its sexual content, but it does get quite torture-y later on. Maeve goes on a bit of a killing spree, and you get to see how that works out for her. So that was my first kind of, I don't know, book I guess I've read like that. And I was thoroughly entertained. I thought it had an interesting commentary. The one of the thought processes that Maeve has in the book is when a man commits crimes like that, it's just kind of like, oh, okay. But when it's a woman, we want to like psychoanalyze her and figure out why she did what she did, and like how her relationship with her mom and dad was, and why she killed all these people. And like Maeve like kind of doesn't have a reason. She's just fucking crazy. And I don't know, I just liked it. I thought it was a good time. The last two that kind of stick out to me, one of them was kind of a surprise. I really enjoy Nat Cassidy as an author. I've read Nestlings and Mary by him, and so I just picked up his newest book, When the Wolf Comes Home, and honestly, like, the concept of the book didn't sound that exciting. I was kind of like, whatever, but I've enjoyed his other two books, and so I was pleasantly surprised at what the story was saying, what it was doing, like how creative it was, and the different turns it took. It's still dark, but also humorous. I think Nat Cassidy is a really funny horror author. I think he's super creative. One of my other favorite things about him is he always does like a author's intro and then like an outro at the end of his book. And he talks about like kind of what the book is about, a little bit of like an intro, but then really wraps up like why he wrote the story, what was important. He talks about his dad a lot in the end of the book, and I just thought that was really interesting. The book itself is really about fear, not like just werewolves, which is what I was thinking. And yeah, there were some parts where I was cracking up, I was laughing, and then I was shocked at the end. There's part of me that's like, I can't believe you just did that. And then there was like one final thing where I was like, no fucking way. Like, you did not just do that. I had a blast listening to it, and that just kind of like solidified him as like a new favorite. So I really enjoyed When the Wolf Comes Home. And then the last one, this might be a little bit of like a recency bias, but The Strange Case of Jane O. And this is by Karen Thompson Walker. We are following Jane, who is this woman, and we learn that like a week before, there's this big episode that she has, but a week before she sees a man who she knows is dead. Like, this person died when she was younger. They are not alive. Like, there's obituaries, but she has a full-on conversation with him in broad daylight. And then a week later, she disappears for 24 hours. She doesn't pick up her son from preschool or daycare. Like, she has no memory of what happened. She's found somewhat disheveled in a park, but there's no signs of harm. Like, but she does not remember anything. And so we are following her story through her psychiatrist, which I thought was super cool. I am such a sucker for like unique storytelling styles. The way this is told is through a psychiatrist who is almost recounting his experience meeting Jane, talking to the police, their sessions, his professional opinion, and you get a little insight to his personal life, but it's more of a like formal recap of Jane. And then we also get Jane's diary entries, because one of his suggestions as her therapist was to start a diary. Maybe that would help with her memory. And so we get a little bit of insight into her as well. But we primarily are from the psychiatrist's point of view. And I just thought the way the story was told, what was happening, was really interesting. You get some answers, but it's also ambiguous enough at the end to where you're like, what? Like, what is going on? And I just thought the writing was really stunning. I don't know. I liked the prose of the author. And again, reading from the psychiatrist's point of view was super interesting. If you're into psychology at all, like, I think you would really enjoy this. So those are the four that really stuck out kind of so far this year. The next question is best sequel you've read. I have only read one sequel, and that was Rebel Witch. That is the second book to the Crimson Moth duology, starting with Heartless Hunter. And like, it was fine. I'm not gonna actually have a book for this one because I don't want it to win just by default because it was the only sequel I read. But not the best sequel. So hopefully I will have some series that I can binge later this year and have some really good sequels later on. But no top sequel for me this year, unfortunately. Biggest disappointment is question number 3, and I have 2 for this one. The first one is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Yes, Emily St. John Mandel. I mentioned this in the first question, but basically this is really well known and well loved for being an incredible post-pandemic story of like rebuilding and art and community. But like, it was not what I was expecting at all. I didn't like the characters we focused on. Honestly, didn't like the characters themselves. Yeah, it felt really flat for me, especially with hearing how well loved this book was. It felt like I didn't read the same thing. And like, to come off of Afterworld and then read this one, I was like, Afterworld did that so much better. So that was just kind of a bummer. I think I gave it 2 stars. I did not like that book at all. And then the other one that was just kind of a bummer is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Klewer. This book was all over the internet last year as a lot of people's best books of the year. And this is following a young couple. They've just bought a fixer-upper, and like one of the women is at home, and this family shows up and is like, hey, like we used to live here. I just want to like show my kids the house before we leave town. And she's like, oh, like I'm super anxious, but okay. And then she lets these people into her house, and then they won't fucking leave. And then it's basically a fever dream from there. I liked the idea of the book at the very, very end, like the last chapter, like when you kind of figure out what is potentially going on. I thought the idea was really cool. I didn't like how it was executed whatsoever. It wasn't scary, in my opinion, and that was one thing I had heard. It was really scary. I did not think so, and I know fear is really subjective, but I have yet to be scared from a book, so that was a bummer. I was hoping to be freaked out. And then, like, it used mixed media, but not in a way I enjoyed. I felt like there were extra documents and interviews and things that were there to like build interest and suspense and like a little bit of a puzzle piece, a little House of Leaves-esque. And I felt like the types of documents that were included just added more confusion without like solidifying anything. And then that took time away from the main characters. Like, I don't know. I just didn't like it. I didn't care. It was just a bummer because so many people rated this so highly, and I wanted to be one of them. I just unfortunately was not. The next question is biggest surprise. So I kind of talked about this a little bit, but When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy, I just really liked it. And it was funny because not that I didn't think I wouldn't enjoy another Nat Cassidy book. I just think the premise of When the Wolf Comes Home didn't sound super interesting. Like, I knew I wanted to pick him up because I just enjoy him as an author. But when I actually got into the story, I was quite surprised, and I had a really, really fun time with that one. If you do pick it up, I would encourage you to grab the audiobook. The voice actor, the main narrator, was really good, and then Nat Cassidy, when he does those intros and outros to the book, like reads them to you, so the author is speaking to you. And then he also has a little cameo as one of the characters, and I thought it was really fun. So that overall was just a nice surprise. Like I said, I figured I would enjoy it, but I enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. The other one is Quicksilver by Callie Hart, only because of like the plot really in the second half of the book. It starts off very basic with your human girl entering a fae realm with like a sexy, grumpy shadow daddy. Blah, blah, blah. Like, we've seen that before, but I liked what happened towards the end. Because it's not just a fae realm. There are other beings that get brought in that I thought were really cool. I liked that addition. And then kind of the big boss battle, the big final like explosion at the end was just different. It felt more unique than a lot of fantasy romance does, especially when you're in the fae realm. But then it also like had these extra elements without being ridiculous. Like, sometimes, especially in fantasy romance, like you have all these specific tropes or characterizations, or like you have like your animal bond and your magical power and your hidden heir and the one bed in the inn. Like, you have all these things that like are well known, but then like there's almost too many of them, so it starts to feel chaotic. I didn't feel that way with Quicksilver. It's not like a literary masterpiece by any means, but I just really liked the ending and like what ended up transpiring. It felt fun. It felt original. It didn't feel chaotic. I don't know. It was just fun. It was surprising that I enjoyed it because I was like, here we go. Like, I needed something like fun and easy to read at the time. The ending was good. I liked it. The next question is anticipated releases. I'm not super clued in to what is currently being released. I did anticipated releases video at the very beginning of the year, so a lot of those are still kind of on my radar. I started The Dream Hotel by Layla Lalami, and I really liked what I've read so far. I'm probably only like 25, 30 pages in, but it's feeling very similar to The School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chan, and I loved that book last year. I really liked it. So I do want to finish that one, and then, I don't know, nothing, like, I mean, the lame answer is all of them. but like nothing specifically is really catching my eye. I'm just kind of curious to see what comes out later this year. I am interested in the Booker prizes, just some of those award releases and announcements to come out. Women's Prize for Fiction, just seeing what those are, and then just seeing how the fall shapes up and like what releases we get for the second half of the year. I'll need to do some more digging, but all of them is the lame answer. So the next question is new favorite author, and I have added new favorite audiobook narrator because I love my audiobooks and I like to talk about them any chance I get. So new favorite author, Nat Cassidy. Like, he just really solidified his ranking for me. I think his stories are just perfect. So I was excited to like come to that realization, like, yes, like you just write really cool stuff, really weird things, like my kind of weird, but also like I think what makes him stand out are those personal touches he adds to his stories with the like author notes at the beginning and end. And especially having them read to you, I think just adds a really cool layer. And I just remember like finishing that book, I'm like, man, he just sounds like a really nice guy. He just sounds like a cool dude. And I just love his stuff. So he is a new favorite author for me. I don't know what else she has written, but Tampa by Alyssa Nutting really stuck out to me. This book is not for everyone. Like, if you have not heard of it and you're interested, please just like look it up for yourself or even read the sample. Like, you will know within the first 10 pages if this book is something you can deal with or not. But this is ultimately about a high school teacher in her early 20s, and she is actively grooming like teenage boys to have sex with, and it's disgusting, it's vile, like it is very hard to read. Our main character is unlikable, that's the whole point. And at the same time, I thought it was incredibly well written. I thought it took a lot of courage to write something like that because it was really exploring like a darker mind from a female perspective, because usually we think about men doing these things. So like having that female perspective was interesting, but it also explored the concept of like, was it sexual assault because she was hot? And that was so interesting. It's hard to say like I liked the book because of the type of content, but I really did. Like, the writing was really well done. Just the story she told I thought was really interesting. Like I said, I need to see what else she has written, but she kind of does stick out as like a newer author that I've read this year that I would be definitely interested in reading from again. And then audiobook narrator, I have to shout out Jeff Hayes from Dungeon Crawler Carl. This is by Matt Dinenham. If you are going to read this book at all, I highly recommend the audiobook because Jeff Hayes' range of characters is wild. Like, he's not just a narrator, like he is like actively voice acting. He is acting, and it's so cool. He voices, obviously, Carl, who is our main human character, his cat, Princess Donut, and then, like, the rest of the dungeon and, like, galaxy, essentially, he brings to life because he is voicing so many other monsters and creatures and goblins that it's crazy. Like, how do you keep that straight? I always wonder that. Dungeon Crawler Carl follows Carl, and basically, like, the earth has, like, collapsed in on itself. Him and, his cat Donut, or his ex-girlfriend's cat, they're outside when this happens, and so they're still alive, but if you were in a building, it just like squishes everybody. And then these tunnels like open up underground, and so you have so much time to go in there, and once you enter it, you have then entered the game, the dungeon crawl. And this is a televised event hosted by the aliens because they have taken over Earth, and if you want to survive, you have to survive the dungeon crawl. And you do this by fighting bosses, getting power-ups, leveling up, like going to the next challenge. Basically just like a video game. It's considered a light RPG, so it's very game-like in its structure. And like the voice acting was so great. It was so good. Matt Dinenham obviously wrote an incredible book with a lot of humor, but Jeff Hayes brings it to life, and there were so many times where I was laughing out loud because it was so damn funny. It was hilarious. If you want like a bit of how Jeff Hayes narrates, I will leave a link below where he does some of the characters. It's so funny. Like, you have to listen to it. The other one would be Stephen Pacey, and he narrates The First Law. No, The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. Well, the entire First Law trilogy, but I listened to that first book, and he is also an incredible audiobook narrator. He really shined with voicing all of the characters differently. You never had to wonder whose point of view you were listening to. Not only from the writing was very clear and distinct for each character, but so is the voice acting. Stephen Pacey really gave each character a distinct voice. My favorite being Glocta. Glocta is like in his 30s, and he was like a well-known warrior and like infantryman, and like ends up being captured as a prisoner of war and then is tortured like severely, and gets all his teeth pulled out. He's crippled now. Like, you would think he's super old, but he's in his 30s, which I thought was a really interesting detail. But he has a lisp when he talks because all his teeth are pulled out, and Stephen Pacey gives him a lisp when he is talking to other people. But when you're inside Glocta's mind, he sounds more like that officer, that like gentleman, that kind of like high-ranking professional. He sounds like that in his own mind, but when we hear him talk to others, he just sounds so goofy. And I just thought that was like an incredible detail. I mean, they're not just reading you these books, like they're acting and giving you it all. And so I just thought they really stood out for audiobook narrators. New favorite book characters or crush. I mean, I read a lot of like darker stuff, so not a lot of options for love interests personally. I think Carl and Donut are really funny from Dungeon Crawler Carl. Specifically Donut. Princess Donut is so funny. She's so goofy. Yeah, I have to say probably Princess Donut as new favorite character. Like, how can you not love her? She's so funny. So a book that left me with big feelings. I kind of broke this up. A book that made me laugh. Definitely Dungeon Crawler Carl. I thought it was very funny. It has a very raunchy, ridiculous sense of humor. Borderline offensive. If that's not your jam, just know. I thought it was hilarious. It doesn't take itself that seriously. But very, very funny nonetheless. A book that made me cry would be Great Big A Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This one was a little touch and go in the beginning, but once I was like in the story and then like at the very end, I felt like she wrapped it up really well. And I don't know if it's just like her writing or like pregnancy hormones, but I did cry at the end. I thought the ending wrapped up really well, and it was just a really lovely story. And then a book that made me mad would be Cloud in a Cornfield by Adam Cesar. I just wanted something different. I felt really disconnected from the story. You are told, and like logically I understand like why the killings are happening, but like we weren't really shown like the motivation, like, so then it just felt like senseless. Like, I don't think like these teenagers shouldn't be killed anyways, but like we were just kind of told why this was happening and not really given like a solid reason behind the actions. And not that I need to like cheer for the bad guy, but it just felt very empty. I didn't feel connected to the characters at all. And there were some writing choices that like really bothered me. Some specific word choices where I'm like, why did you say that? Like, that was unnecessary. And that's probably me just personally being too nitpicky, but I was like, what is going on here? Like, what's happening? So yeah, that one didn't work for me. I almost quit about halfway through because I was that annoyed. Unfortunately, yeah, it just made me mad because I'm like, what are we doing? What's happening? The next question would be overall favorite audiobook. I will not bore you and tell you about all the audiobooks I have listened to narrated by Julia Whalen, because those are always incredible by default because they're narrated by Julia. I have mentioned this a couple times now, but I think When the Wolf Comes Home like is like my favorite audiobook so far of this year because of the narrator's voice acting, the intro and outro from Nat Cassidy, just the overall experience. I thought it was all really well done. So that one wins again. What book does everyone need to read? This book is mainly for mothers or women interested in motherhood, but I think you should definitely check out Matrescence by Lucy Jones. This book talks about the transition from woman to mother. Matrescence is a developmental stage with expected behaviors and thoughts and just things that occur during this time. And I think being aware of some of those things, while it might not make the transition easier, it might help if you're aware of like what you're feeling is normal, or like there's a explanation for these things, because I've learned there's a lot that happens after you have a baby. So I think this book is incredible if you were in that phase of life or on that journey or interested in it in any way, shape, or form. But as far as like a blanket recommendation, I don't really have one out of what I've read. The things I enjoy are specific to me, and I feel like I could recommend anyone a book, but I like would need to know what you're interested in, what you're not interested in. Like sometimes I feel like that just is way too specific. So that's all I got for a book everyone should read. Books that I would like to reread this year would be... Ooh. I would really like to redo The Justice of Kings or The Empire of the Wolf. The first and second book I've already read. I would like to reread those so I can finish the series. I really enjoyed the first two books when I read it. I thought Richard Swan's writing and the world he created was really, really good. I just liked it so much. This is definitely like a grim fantasy world with like death magic, lots of politics, lots of law influence. Richard Swan is a lawyer by day, and so you see that expertise through our main character and his protege, and I just really liked it so much, and I think I just have been scared to like finish it because I enjoyed it so much. But I would like to get back into this world and finish the series. And then I'll probably have to reread Malice by John Gwynne, if not do like some very intense skimming. I read this almost 2 years ago now, and I really enjoyed it. I just didn't have the books in the series to continue, so I would like to get into some John Gwynne. I don't know what my reading year is going to look like when baby gets here, but like I am kind of missing some big chunky fantasy, so I would like to get to this if possible. And I think that's kind of it. Yeah, I reread sometimes, but there's a lot of new stuff I want to get to too, and like all these things, so I don't know. The next question is, what book world would you like to live in? Again, I've read a lot of really dark things, so like definitely not Afterworld or The Starving Saints, where there's like religious cannibals. Or More Cannibals Than the Lamb by Lucy Rose. What else? Definitely not Clown in a Cornfield or Mayfly. I mean, I think the best option would be An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. This is a really cute fantasy standalone, fantasy romance standalone. It does take place in a fae world. We're called the Fair Folk. And I think if you picked the right court, you could have a great time. The Fair Folk are kind of tricksters, so you'd have to be a little careful, but like, this seems the safest option. Or I can't remember exactly where Great Big Beautiful Life takes place, but I think that's somewhere on the East Coast. So like maybe like a small little like East Coast town would be cute. Could be a vibe, but that's really all I got. The next question is, what word would you use to describe your reading year? And mine has been slow. Oh, so slow. And that's okay. I've been busy and like not feeling my best, so reading has been a little hard. So this is definitely the slowest I've read in quite some time. So I'm just doing what I can, really. I've read a few things recently and like some of that momentum is coming back, so that does feel good. But yeah, we're just in a different phase of life, so books are just a little bit slower going than they used to be, and that's okay. The last question is kind of a twofer. Basically just like a goal check-in for 2025 and then some books you would like to prioritize for the end of the year. I looked up my goals that I had set at the very beginning of the year, before I found out I was pregnant, and then before the first trimester knocked me down for months. At the time, I didn't really want a numerical goal. I really wanted to focus on quality over quantity. But now that my quantity has slowed down, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Like, maybe I do want a numerical goal now. I think if I were to give myself a number, I think I could maybe hit 50. But that really just depends on how life looks when baby's actually here. So we'll see. I think ultimately I just want to keep reading, even if it's slower, like a little bit every day or every couple days, just because I enjoy it. Like, it doesn't have to be this like crazy hobby, even though it sometimes feels like it needs to be, but I just want to keep reading. I wanted to like spend intentionally and maximize my memberships. I haven't really been buying books lately. I've only gone to the library once, maybe twice, so I would like to do that more. I just made one seasonal TBR for myself so far. this year, and that's been much easier than doing monthly TBRs. Hopefully I'll be able to share like a fall one later when I'm cozied up with a newborn. Hopefully I'll have a bunch of like really lovely fall books to read. But yeah, I like just the idea of a seasonal TBR. Seems more manageable. And then just keeping my reading varied. I think I've done a good job. I've definitely checked out more genres than I have in the past, like more books in the horror category. I've done some more nonfiction this year than I usually do. So I think that's like all well and good. As far as books to prioritize, there's a couple books I want to get to before baby gets here. I talk about those in my last video. I'll just pop them up on the screen for good measure. And then, I don't know. The lame answer is all of them. But that's kind of a cop-out. I don't know. I'm just kind of going with the flow, picking up things that sound good. There's nothing I'm like that I need to get to. This is all just fun for me. So really just whatever sounds good. Hopefully I can make my way through my shelves or check out the library again. Just all of them. That's the real answer, right? That is it, you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this mid-year book of Freakout. I want to know like what your favorite book was, biggest disappointment, like what are you looking forward to? Maybe you can help me out in that area. I hope you have a great day and I will see you in the next one. Bye!